You're listening to the Deloitte Business Chemistry Confessions podcast series. Hello, I'm your host, Kim Christford, National Managing Director of the Deloitte Greenhouses.
And I'm Suzanne Vickberg, also known as Dr. Suze, lead researcher for business chemistry.
Welcome to this week's episode of Deloitte Business Chemistry Confessions. You're about to go on a journey of true workplace stories of success and failure that all came down to one thing: business chemistry. Should leaders change their own styles for the good of the team? Today's episode uncovers a team dynamic that wasn't working for our guest. As the team's manager, Ritwik struggled to produce with a team that tested his need to be in control.
It was difficult to start them off on the agenda, but once they got started, for every topic they would just go off in a tangent. My mind was always thinking of, where did we leave this topic off? How do I get back? How do I complete everything on time? How do I get back to my work? It was chaos.
He tried to force his own work style on his team, and the unintended consequences that followed made him realize what can happen when one dominant style gets in the way of an entire team. You've heard stories about pain points being triggered when a manager forces a process on a team. You'll hear more than that in There Is No I in We. But ultimately, it's a comeback story of redemption.
I was tasked to lead a group of 5 professionals who were extremely creative, very high on energy, tons of ideas, and were just very vocal about the ideas that they had. That was the big stress point for me. I'm a very agenda-driven person. I like to go one point to the next and complete the conversation around a particular point, identify the next steps, and then move on to the next step on the agenda. Very process-focused. I like checklists. But the team, on the other hand, they would be everything other than what I wanted to discuss and everything that was beyond the checklist. So I would start off the conversation and they would just, one, it was difficult to start them off on the agenda. But once they got started, for every topic, they would just go off in a tangent. My mind was always thinking of, where did we leave this topic off? How do I get back? How do I complete everything on time? How do I get back to my work? It was chaos. When I stopped their conversations and I asked them to come back to the agenda, they just basically shut down. They didn't participate in the conversations going further. They didn't provide any ideas. They would just look at this as a one-way conversation with me telling them what to do, and they were just taking down things that they needed to do. There were 2 dimensions to it. One was just the feelings from the team meeting started to impact my engagements with the team, and they started to see me as somebody who's distant, aloof, not part of their team.
5-yard penalty.
And that started to impact some of the other meetings that I used to have with them. But then also in the one-on-one meetings or any other interactions, I would see similar behaviors. They would want to go off and explore new areas, new avenues, new initiatives. I wanted them to stick to that agenda. I wanted them to clearly understand that we had limited time. We needed to finish some things off and let's just be on track. And so they started to disengage with me, and it started to really impact the relationship that I had with my team. I knew I had to do something.
Let's go, team! Let's go!
During one of the team meetings, as soon as I started off the agenda, as usual, the team went off in a tangent and they started to talk among themselves. And I thought, you know what, let me wait and see where this goes. And if there's a need, I will have another team meeting. I'll do something else to overcome what we have missed. But let's see what happens. And to the team's surprise, I had not jumped in. I had not stopped the conversation. So they were pretty excited. They were happy. They were talking. And slowly, once everybody had a chance to chime in and speak about their weekend and speak about the stuff that they did on their personal side, there was a natural dip to the energy in the room. And at that point in time, I came in and I said, well, let's see if we can start talking about the next item on the agenda. And that really worked well. There was a sudden change in the energy in the room. There was some positivity around. They were all excited. They continued to participate in the topics that I was raising, which was very good. So when the team started to go off on a tangent, I would put a mental pin to the agenda where we were. And that just helped me get back to the agenda once there was a natural dip in the energy in the conversation that the team was having. If there was one word for this, it was liberating. There were more ideas that we could discuss. That was the positive side that I was looking to. Earlier we were just siloed in our thinking. We were just doing the things that we had to get done. But now that I was more open to new ideas, I was participating in the brainstorming. The team was actually coming up with new and improved ideas. And we all together started to click and do better, and our performance started to improve. I think it was just one of those things that just happened. It clicked, and then you start working on refining it, and you understand the value that other participants, other personalities are bringing to the table. Because as I said, once things were better, there were more ideas being generated by the team. A lot of them improved some of our programs. A lot of them helped create new programs for us. It's because we looked at ourselves and asked, what can we do to find a middle ground so our group can find success?
When I listen to this story, the expression herding cats comes to mind, and I think that's a particularly difficult thing when you're talking about someone who sounds very much like a guardian, very linear, very process-oriented. I imagine this must have been really overwhelming and chaotic for him.
Yeah, I definitely recognize the feeling as a guardian myself. Just listening to him describe himself about being agenda-driven and process-focused, and then talking about this team that he had who clearly wouldn't describe themselves that way. And yeah, he used the word chaos. I'm sure that that's what it felt like to him probably every time he went into a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the group does sound like they're very high on pioneer, which is, of course, the opposite of the guardian pattern, but also probably integrator. So they're big on ideas, big on brainstorming, going off on a million tangents. It doesn't need to be linear and process-oriented. I love the part where, you complete something completely with a period on the end, and then you move on to the next point, and that's definitely not a pioneer thing. And it's really not an integrator thing either. So he's got sort of a double dose of chaos coming his way.
Yeah. And I can literally picture what it was probably like for him in the beginning meetings that he had with this team, where he was trying to control them, and they were, wanting to socialize and wanting to go on tangents because that's how they do things and that's how they talk to each other. And it sounds almost like a scene that you'd see in a TV show about, the manager trying to control the situation while people are throwing spitballs across the room or something.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting because he says that when he tried to control them and force them in the agenda, then they shut down. So suddenly you have these ideas people who are no longer talking about ideas. It was like there's this resentment of being shut down, which I actually understand. I'm a high pioneer as my primary pattern, and there is nothing more annoying to a pioneer than a no. No because. I want the yes and. I don't want somebody who's telling me, no, we can't talk about, no, we can't do that, and trying to constrain me. And I could see how that would be very off-putting to his team.
Yeah, I think this is a great story to illustrate what happens when you try to railroad a team and force a way of working onto them that doesn't work for them. And I think that leaders and managers often do that. They think, well, I'm the boss, and the team is going to flex to my style. They're going to do things the way that I want them to do it. But the great thing about him is he realized that's not going to work. And ultimately what he wanted was a team who was high energy with great ideas and who was going to really, brainstorm. And he figured out that he needed to be the one to flex, at least to start.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting that he started, it sounds like, with a more extreme flex. He really tried to just sort of let them do what they wanted, and that obviously doesn't work either. I think the message here is that you have to bend both ways. You can't just go with somebody else's style, and that also has the problem that you lose the diversity, which we've said is so important. His end solution is brilliant because it has the essence of what he needs. It has a semblance of a framework and a way to go through it, but it gives them the room to go off the reservation and then meander their way back to his path. So it really is a nice hybrid of the two different styles.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he actually didn't have to flex that much. He just had to flex a little. That was enough. And when he gave them like a little bit of free rein, and then he paid attention and watched them very closely, there was a natural pause, which was the time when he could bring them back to the agenda, and then they were willing to come. But once he realized that was okay and you're still going to get to the end, then he got the team that he needed, which brought all their energy and their great ideas.
Exactly. And it is such a pragmatic approach at the end of the day, which is very guardian. So it's very, very true to him. I liked what you said about him paying attention. I think that's very impressive in this story. The fact that he noticed that there were these working style differences and that he did a very logical progression of things to try to see how he could make that work more efficiently. And ultimately, as you say, ended up with something that didn't take him too far outside of his comfort zone, but clearly elevated the performance of the entire team.
Yeah, and I think it shows evidence of self-reflection, which is one of the powers of the more introverted types. They do tend to spend time thinking, first of all, paying attention to what other people are doing and how they're responding, and then thinking about their own behavior and how it's impacting other people. I think that, sometimes people stop there. He actually went the next step, which was to then accommodate it. I'm actually going to change my behavior to give them what they need so I can get what I need. It's not just altruistic. At the end of the day, he's able to accomplish what he needs to because he gave them what they needed.
Yeah. But you mentioned him accommodating them. It does seem oftentimes that introverts are either better about or expected to accommodate extroverts more than the other way around. The classic sort of business persona is often a very extroverted individual, and yet we know that there are a lot of introverts that add a whole lot of value, and that there's probably some flexing that needs to happen the other way as well, so that introverts have the time to process and have the time to recharge after doing something in a really chaotic environment. And I don't know how much we hear talk about that direction.
That's true. And as an introvert myself, I can say I often feel like I wouldn't mind people flexing a little bit more in my direction as well, because I do have to often flex just to be successful and to fit into a work environment. So yeah, I've definitely noticed that people don't flex as much to introverts. And why do you think that is, Kim? You're a pioneer. You're representing the more extroverted side of the house.
The other mistake I see happening is that there are assumptions made about people who are not speaking or who are more withdrawn, that maybe they don't have anything to say, versus they're processing, and it's a different approach to the way that they think. And so extroverts may be dismissive of introverts as well. So why should I flex? Because it's just that they don't have anything to say.
Right.
I clearly have something to say, so therefore I'm gonna share it with the world. That is my gift to you.
Right.
The confession is in. There is no I in we is another example of how the science of business chemistry can improve the art of relationships. Be sure to tune in for our next episode. Find it on Deloitte.com or at iTunes and Stitcher. Business chemistry can help you understand your own work style and how it's similar to or different from others. This understanding lets you flex your style to better accommodate people's unique needs and leverage their strengths. Business chemistry helps improve working relationships and build stronger teams. You can learn more at our website, Deloitte.com.